Hello, my name is Stephen Murray, and this is The Knoll, an online gathering place for the people of Knoll Lutheran Church and a place to share our community stories. I'm sure we've all had moments in our lives where we've called upon God to help us in a tough situation. God, please get me out of this. God, if you only can help me now. But Jim Almquist has a truly life or death moment where he called upon God, and he used that to buoy him through the rest of his life. And this truly is an adventure story, so grab your life jacket, hold on tight, and listen to Jim Almquist's story of adventure and faith.
Hello, my name is Jim Almquist. I'm a member of Knoll Lutheran Church. I've been a member here for some years. I'm a retired ELCA pastor. I've been a missionary and an Army chaplain. And now I've been retired for quite a few years. But I think I'd like to start out by telling a story which sort of sets it up and was a very great experience for me because I'd gone 1 year to college. I was about 19 years old, and I was working my way through. I didn't get help at all. So getting a really good summer job was important. My brother was a teacher up in Wrangell, Alaska, and he told me, Jim, if you can get up here, there are good jobs up here. And so I, with a few other students, we drove a car to Seattle. And then I got on a small ship there, which my brother told me about. It's a cannery ship bringing supplies up to the canneries, salmon fishing and salmon canneries, all the way along the southeastern coast of Alaska. And we were going to Wrangell. That's one place this ship was stopping. He says, if you go in there, they'll let you work, help loading the ship, because it's not a regular union ship. It's a cannery ship. Then you get a free ride up there. It won't cost you anything. When you get up here, I can find a job for you. Well, he did. All of that worked out great. And so I'm up in Alaska now. And the first job I got was road construction. I was on a dynamite crew building a road around the side of a mountain. That was kind of exciting. But what I really wanted to do is get out on the water. I've lived by lakes and rivers all my life. Here a job opened up on the ship. My brother got me the job. It's a cannery ship that goes out to the fishing areas, and there are big traps, fish traps up there. Now, we're talking back in the 1950s when you could have fish traps. Now they can't do that anymore. But we'd go out and we'd take all the fish out of the fish trap, or maybe a couple different traps, or fishermen would come on and bring their fish to us instead of sailing all the way back to the cannery. So on this particular trip, and I'd made many of these trips that summer, and so I used to the charts. I was really excited about watching. I sat next to the captain in the wheelhouse and watched the charts and watched the lights. And a lot of our sailing was at night. We'd be loading up our ship during the day with salmon. This particular time, we had a huge load. The hold in the bottom of our small, I say ship, it was a very small ship where you would call it a large boat, converted to being sort of bringing in like a big freighter hauling in fish. Well, we had a full load in the hold, a good thing, and then even fish on the deck. We had so many fish. And both the captain, Tom, and the first mate, Charlie, who was also the cook, have been working their heads off all day long. And I'm helping, but I don't do that much with what they were doing as a deckhand. About midnight, he said, Jim, we are really tired, Charlie and me. Do you think you could run the boat for a while? You know the way, you know the chart, you know the lights and everything. And I said, yeah, I was eager to jump in there, 19-year-old, So now I got the chart. He showed me where we were on the chart, knew the compass, knew where we were. And it was a clear, beautiful night, kind of windy. And there was swells on the ocean, kind of big swells, not big, huge waves clapping in. But when those swells get in close to shore, and in that part of Alaska, the coastline has got a lot of islands. And there's an inside passage. The ships go up and down on the inside passage. We were fishing or getting fish outside of that. So we had to go in through the islands into the harbor of Wrangell, Alaska. Well, what happened was this. I took over. They went to their cabins and went to sleep. And I'm alone running the ship now. And I thought I was really pretty big. This is really something for a 19-year-old. We're going along, everything is fine. I'm changing course. You get to a certain point, there's a light there, you change your course, and you follow that until you hit another light or some other distinctive marking so you know where you're turning, changing your course. Now we're going in around these islands, getting into the mainland. All of a sudden I came to where I was supposed to see a light. There was no light. I thought, what in the world? I'm timing myself all the way. There's time to be at the light. There's no light. And I thought, what happened? The light never goes out, I didn't think. So I must have had my time wrong. So I kept going. That's a big mistake, because once you get off course, then the tides are running around those islands like rivers. So you get pulled one way or another, and got to be careful. But what happened was this. I went about 10 minutes past the light where I was supposed to turn, and then discovered the whole thing was covered up with a huge, heavy blanket of fog. I was in the fog so thick you couldn't see a thing. It was like a big blanket. You could kind of look up, and there's lights now and then. You could see the sky a little bit, but the fog, looking to see lights or see anything, nothing. And now I'd been going 10 minutes past the light. I was way off the course, and I didn't know where I was in the thick of this fog. So I yelled at Tom, the captain, and he got out, stumbling out, and he said, well, okay, Jim, what's the matter? Where are we? I says, I don't know, Tom. What? You don't know? No. I says, I don't know. He looked out and he saw the fog. Well, he says, how long have we been in the fog? Well, I said, we went by light such and such about 10 minutes ago. And I kept going on the same course. But, of course, the tides now are taking us this way and that. And our original course takes all that into account. So now, who knows where we are in this fog? That's a very bad situation to be in. Because, as I said, the tides will move you this way or that way. They're going like rivers around these islands. There's islands and rocks and whatnots we're getting into. Bad. So he says, Jim, you go up on top. He woke up Charlie, so we had to, up on the top deck, he said, Jim, be absolutely quiet and listen. Listen for anything. Because if we get into the line, in the path of these big ships, in one way it would be good, because we could follow the ship then. They got radar and everything. We didn't have that. Or we could, get some determination of where in the world we are. But anything you hear. I was up there at least a good hour and a half. We're into the middle of the morning, at least now. Still very dark with a fog. It was just black outside. And no sounds, no nothing. As a young man, I was brought up in a Christian home. I knew how to pray. But I hadn't paid too much attention to that. And another thing, one of the trap watchmen, these great big traps had a little shack on it, and 2 watchmen had to be on it, because there were guys that come by and steal fish. One was a philosophy teacher from this University of Oregon, and so he would love to get off that trap with that old shepherd who was on with him, only knew how to chew snuff and swear, and he'd jump on our boat, and he and I would sit and talk. And he'd say, Jim, why do you believe in God? And he started in with a bunch of stuff like that, and I'm trying to tell him, but by this time, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. He was pumping all kinds of philosophy into me, which I was interested in, but I didn't know if there was a God or not. Now, in the middle of that fog, out there lost, and it was my fault because we'd gone beyond it, so I started praying. I started praying hard. God, please help us out of this mess. Help me out of this. I'm sorry. There's a Bible verse that came to me. The Bible verse is from John 15:5. And the Bible verse is about Jesus telling his disciples about the branches and the vine. Unless the branches stay attached to the vine, they become worthless. And the end of verse 5, chapter 15, verse 5, it says this, for apart from me, you can do nothing. And that hit me right between the eyes. I'd never been so helpless in my life. There was nothing I could do, nothing they could do. We were at the mercy of the tides, of the fog, of the weather, of the ocean. And there we were. And I was pleading with God. I just prayed, Lord, please help me, help us. And I'll follow you. I'll be a Christian. I'll be a witness of my faith no matter what. Wherever you want me to go, I will go. There's an old song that says, I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord. I'll be what you want me to be. That was my prayer. Well, I walked pretty close to God at that point, but pretty soon, this is about an hour and a half, so we were wandering around here not knowing where we were, I started hearing something. It was a kind of a dull roar, and I was wondering, what is that? It sounded like a waterfalls. And we were getting closer to it and closer to it. I could see nothing. Until pretty soon, almost out of the fog, there's a very dark something arising in front of us. We were heading right into a mountainous, rocky area. Now we had huge waves. We were right in the middle of these big rolling, the swells, ocean swells were now waves, huge waves, rolling up, crashing on the rocks. And that's what the roar was, of these waves hitting the rocks, and we were coming right into it. I yelled at Tom. Well, he could tell the same thing. By now we're close enough to the shore, we could almost see the waves bouncing up on these rocks. Good thing he was an old dog seaman. He knew how to handle that boat. I think maybe a guy like me might think about backing up. There's no way you can back up a boat against those waves. There's nothing. I don't know whether you're going too slow, you can't make a turn, especially with the load we had. He gave it full power and cranked that big wheel around, and we were going like a speedboat now, as hard as we go, with as tight a turn, and we laid right over on the side. And I said, God, please, please keep us right up, because he had to. And the waves now hit us on the broadside, but he made that turn. So we're back around, now facing out into the ocean again. I didn't know how in the world that boat stayed up. And then I realized we had a full load of fish in the hold that was ballast. We probably had a couple ton of fish on board that thing, one of the biggest loads we'd ever had. And all those fish in the bottom of our boat were like a ballast. They helped us not tip over. With the waves hitting us, we would have gone. God, thank you. And I was praying some more. I just sat up there and prayed. And then I saw something else. Way off to the right, there was a light, a tiny, tiny pinpoint of light, a red light. It looked like up in the sky, way off. I yelled at Tom, hey, Tom, look, there's a light up there, something. You see, the fog up above us wasn't thick. The fog was laying like a blanket on the water. That's the steeple on the Presbyterian church, and that cross is a lighted red cross. That's Wrangell. That's where we're going. He pulled out, and for the next, I don't know how long it took us to get there because the waves are so bad and everything. But the cross led us into the harbor. I found out later that cross, the church was up on a kind of a high area in Wrangell, like a hill or something, and that had led more than one boat into the harbor in bad weather. So we made it, and then I said, God, okay, without you, I could do nothing. We had the ballast in the bottom of this boat to get us turned around. We saw the rocks in time so we could get turned around. Now we're out here in the fog again, and there's a red light, and it's a cross. What more do you need, Jim? What more do you need? And so that became a very important point in my life. From now on, my life is dedicated to God. So that verse, John 15:5, apart from me, you can do nothing. And I discovered that again and again and again. In the Army, I wound up in the Army as a missionary up in the Arctic, as a pilot. I never forgot that. And then there's a song, that's an old gospel song, that we used to sing out on the lake when fishing with my dad. He liked my brother and me to fish with him. In those days, this is in the 40s now, it was a rowboat, and he rowed the boat with a rod and reel between his legs. And Paul and I, one on each side, had a rod out, and we caught northerns. We caught a lot of fish. We lived in Spicer on Green Lake. In those days, that was a good fishing lake. And the song that we sang so oftentimes, Jesus, Savior, pilot me. The words go like this, Jesus, Savior, pilot me over life's tempestuous sea. I knew what the sea was like, tempestuous. Unknown waves before me roll, hiding rocks and treacherous shoal. Chart and compass come from thee. Oh yeah, but I'd gotten off the compass. I'd gotten off the chart. And that can be true in life. We get off the chart in terms of our living for Christ, and we're in dangerous water, whether we know it or not. Chart and compass come from thee, Jesus, Savior, pilot me. That was my prayer. The last verse went, when at last I near the shore, and the fearful breakers roar, boy, did we hear them, scared the living daylights out of me until that ship got turned around, twixt me and the peaceful rest. Then while leaning on thy breast. I don't know about leaning on Jesus' breast, but boy, I was leaning on God. I was leaning on that. That was the only way we're going to get out of this mess. May I hear thee say to me, fear not, I will pilot thee. And that's been my life ever since.
The Knoll is a production of Oak Knoll Lutheran Church in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Music performed by Matt Cerar and produced by me, Stephen Murray. If you would like to learn more about Oak Knoll Lutheran Church, please visit us on the web at oklutheran.org or check out the live stream of our Sunday worship on YouTube every week at 9:30 Central. If you would like to share your story as part of the Knoll podcast, you can find information on how to get involved on our website. Thanks for listening, and God bless.